evening. How are you? It's great to be learning with you on a Sunday. Let's light up the darkness. Excuse me. Who is with us on a Sunday for Daf Pei Ches, page 88 here in Tractate Kesubos, the 15th volume of the Talmud. We are in chapter 9. Today, completing our discussion of Mishna number 5 and opening Mishna number 6. John in Maine, Yehuda in South Carolina, James in Indianapolis, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Steve in New Hampshire, Paul in the Great Northwest, Melissa in Great Neck, Ann in Georgia, David in Indiana, Lucy in Minnesota, Sharon in New Jersey, Bella in Florida, John in Scotland, Tom in PA, Paula in Chicago, Tracy in Oklahoma, Shandora in the Bronx. Welcome, everybody. Gamar Hasima Tova. May you be inscribed for a good, healthy, prosperous, meaningful, joy-filled new year. We are in the 10 days, the days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is Wednesday. So we won't be able to have a 6 o'clock class on Tuesday. So I think just like we did for Erev Rosh Hashanah, on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, we'll have a noon class, right? So today's Sunday. Tomorrow we'll have a class at the regular time, 6 p.m. And then on Tuesday, we'll have a class at noon Pacific as we get ready for Yom Kippur. Obviously, no class on Wednesday nor Wednesday night. We'll resume on Thursday. And then next Sunday night begins the holiday of Sukkot. So we are right after Yom Kippur. Traditionally, we build our sukkah immediately. And then during the week of Sukkot, and we've been talking lately about these pronunciation differences. Some say Sukkot, some say Sukkot, same holiday. But we live in our sukkahs during that time. The first 2 days are a full holiday. So, of course, we couldn't be online. And then when we come back for the Chol HaMoed, right, the intermediate days of the festival, the first of those days will be on Wednesday. So a week from Wednesday, a week from Yom Kippur. And that's going to be the last day of our class before this hiatus that I'm just forced to take as pre-production starts. I mean, it's just ramping up so fast on our movie. There's, a movie has literally so many moving parts. And as the director, I'm just pulled in a million different directions, and I won't be able to teach the class during the pre-production and production periods. My hope is that once we get into post-production, my schedule is much more under my control, and though I'll be editing the movie every day with our editor, I can make it to teach the class in the evening, so that is the plan there. At any rate, regular time tomorrow, noon on Tuesday, then it's Yom Kippur. We'll take Wednesday off, and then we'll be back to regular schedule Thursday, Friday. Okay. What have we got here? Page 88. So here in this chapter 9, we've been talking about the rights of the spouses under the marriage contract, and specifically the right that a husband has to demand an oath from his wife, not in the normal course of things, but if she becomes his employee, because he owns a business and he hires his wife to work there, or he owns properties and he hires her as a steward to watch over her properties. So even though at that point he could demand that she swear an oath that she has not misappropriated funds, they might agree at the time that they write the marriage contract that he will waive his right to demand such oaths from her over the course of the marriage. And we've been learning, can he do that? Yes, he can. Will that waiver of his right to demand an oath pass down to his heirs? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. These are the kinds of questions that we've been examining here pursuant to Mishnah number 5. In chapter 9. We pick this up at the very bottom of page 87b. Rav Papa said, if the husband is wise, No, okay. So we were also talking in this Mishna number 5 about another situation where she might have to swear an oath is if she takes a partial payment of the marriage contract. So the basic idea, right? There's many other rights and obligations spelled out in the marriage contract, but the main one, which the early sages instituted for the benefit of wives. In a patriarchal society where the husband has the right to demand a divorce, but the wife doesn't have the right to initiate divorce. So the sages made it difficult, clumsy, impractical, challenging for a husband to divorce his wife. And so the main thing was that they instituted was that if he divorces her, he has to pay her a big sum of money. And likewise, if he dies and leaves her a widow, his estate has to pay her this large sum of money. The minimum amount of that money was 100 dinars for a woman who enters a marriage as a widow or a divorcee from an earlier marriage, and 200 dinars if she enters marriage for the first time. But that was just the minimum amount. And prominent families could agree to a much larger marriage settlement in the ketuba. Now, what if she needs money before she gets divorced, before her husband dies? She's got a business idea and she'd like to take some of her marriage payment early, right, while she's still married. And if the husband is amenable to that, so he might pay her this partial payment of the marriage contract. Later, when they get divorced or the husband dies and she comes to the estate and says, I want the rest of the marriage contract. Now, normally a wife does not have to swear an oath to say that she hasn't received her marriage contract in order to receive her contract. But if she has received a partial payment, then yes, she has to swear an oath that this is the amount that I've already received and this is the amount that I am still owed. Now, in certain situations, she might not have to, as we were talking about yesterday, she might not have to swear an oath even then. Now, if the husband is wise, he can induce her to become obligated to take an oath by Torah law. And we've got this distinction of oaths by Torah law versus oaths by rabbinic law. One difference we saw yesterday is that an oath that you take by Torah law generally is you take an oath and do not pay. But this situation is she takes an oath in order to receive money. And so at least some of the opinions yesterday were that that's because this particular oath is a oath by rabbinic law, not by Torah law. So if the husband is wise, he can induce her to become obligated to take an oath even by Torah law, and even in a case where only one witness saw the payment of the marriage contract. Right, so we saw yesterday that how is a matter established generally in Jewish law? By the testimony of two witnesses. So if you only have the testimony of one witness, what have you got? You would think a big pile of nothing. But one witness can create uncertainty, which might lead in certain kinds of litigation, one of the parties to need to swear an oath. So in this case, where one witness comes forward and says, I saw this husband pay his wife the marriage payment or pay part of the marriage payment. So it's not two witnesses, but it's enough to create an uncertainty and force the wife to swear an oath that she hasn't received all of it or she hasn't received more in order to receive what is owed to her. So here, commenting on that, if the husband is wise, he can induce her to become obligated to take an oath by Torah law, even in a case where only one witness saw the payment of the marriage contract. And how does he do that? Like this. He now gives her the payment of her entire marriage contract. He's saying, I already gave her a partial payment. So what's he going to do now? He's going to say, I'm going to give you the whole thing. I believe I already paid you some. But in front of one witness, in the presence of one witness, he now gives her the whole marriage contract. So as far as he's concerned, let's say he paid half some years ago. Now he's going to pay the whole thing. So according to him, he's now paid 150% of the marriage contract. And he does this in the presence of one witness. And this one witness joins the earlier witness so that there are now two witnesses to the payment of the entire marriage contract. And then the husband establishes that his first payment, about which the first witness testified, that was a loan. and he claims payment of that sum from her, supported by the testimony of the first witness. Now, with regard to this claim, her oath would serve the purpose of exempting her from payment, and it is not connected with a lien on land, where we said we don't take oaths, swear oaths, when it's connected to a lien on land, though we do it in case of movable produce or loan documents. There we can swear an oath, but with respect to land, we don't swear oaths. We want full documentation that the land changed hands, or it's not going to change hands again. Right, so with regard to this claim, her oath would serve the purpose of exempting her from payment, and it is not connected with a lien on land, and therefore the witnesses can obligate her in an oath by Torah law. Now here's a note from Rav Steinsaltz. Rashi, and to a certain extent the commentator Rivan, maintain that oaths by Torah law differ from oaths by rabbinic law, both in their level of severity and in the manner in which each is performed. One who takes an oath by Torah law holds an item of sanctity, like a Torah scroll, in his hand, and pronounces the divine name, or one of his appellations, right? One of the divine names. And by contrast, an oath by rabbinic law does not include either of these elements, and in effect is nothing more than the acceptance of a curse upon one who lies. How interesting. Right, so in the case of an oath by Torah law, the person swearing that oath holds a Torah scroll in his hand, says the name of God, and swears that his statement is true. Whereas an oath by rabbinic law is basically saying, the person swears that he understands that if he's lying, he's going to be cursed in this world. Still a very heavy matter, but not as intense as an oath by Torah law. Again, as I've been saying for the last few days, this only works in a God-fearing society. If people are just apt to lie, and even in a God-fearing society, we've encountered that there were some people who were known to take false oaths because they didn't care. And so such people, once they acquired a reputation like that, well, no one made them swear an oath because they knew that that person might lie, and they would ask the other person in the litigation to take the oath if that worked in that particular kind of litigation. Now, Rav Shesha, the son of Rav Edi, objects to this. How can the husband join the first witness to the last witness when their testimonies do not refer to the same action? The first witness was, some years ago, I saw the husband make a partial ketuba payment to his wife. And the second witness says, years later, now the husband is divorcing his wife and he paid the entire ketuba payment. They saw totally different things. So rather, Rav Shesha, the son of Rav Edi, said, what the husband does is he now gives her the payment of her entire marriage contract in the presence of two witnesses, both the earlier witness, I guess he brings him back, and another witness. And then the husband establishes that the first payment, about which the first witness had testified, that was a loan, and he claims payment of that sum from her, supported by the testimony of the first witness, and since it's now characterized as a loan rather than a partial ketuba payment, that can obligate her to swear an oath if she claims she didn't receive it. Rav Ashi objects to this. The woman can still say, I had two marriage contracts. She can claim that he wrote two marriage contracts and she collected the payments of two separate points in time. But there was never a loan. So rather, Rav Ashi said, you need a better strategy if you want to be a wise husband. You want to obligate her to swear an oath. How do you do it? It is possible for him to obligate her to take an oath if he informs the two witnesses that on this occasion he is paying her for the one marriage contract that he wrote. She is then unable to claim that it was a different marriage contract, and he can compel her to take an oath by Torah law about the first payment, which has now been established as a loan. New subject. The Mishna, our Mishna, Mishnah number 5 in chapter 9, teaches that if a woman comes to claim her marriage contract from liened property that has been sold to a third party, she must take an oath, right? As we said many times, a woman has a lien on all of her husband's property to ensure that he will pay her marriage contract when they divorce, or his estate if he dies first. If there's not enough money at the time of their divorce or at the time that she's widowed for her to receive the ketuba payment, she can seize his property in order to guarantee that she is paid. Well, what if there's no cash in the estate and there's not enough property in the estate? But we see that there's a record that he sold some property to a third party and then he spent the money. Well, that third party who bought the lien, who bought, let's say, a field that belonged to the husband, but had a lien on it for the sake of the wife's ketuba, that person who bought it, I guess hopefully should have had a lawyer, should have demanded reps and warranties. And one of those would be when the husband sold it, that there was no lien on it because there was a lien on it for the benefit of the wife. So now, since there's no other property that is in the possession of the estate or in the husband if he's still alive after a divorce, she can go after that field that the third party bought because she had a lien on it. But in order to extract that field or other kinds of property from that third party, so this is one of those situations where she has to swear an oath that she has not otherwise been paid her marriage contract. Right? So the Mishnah taught that if a woman comes to claim her marriage contract from liened property that had been sold to a third party, she must take an oath. And we learned in a Mishnah there in Tractate Shavuos 45a, similarly, orphans can collect payment only by means of an oath. Same situation. Where a field was sold that properly belonged to orphans, right, to the heirs of a man who died, and now they want to get it back because it was sold improperly. They're going to have to swear an oath that it is their field, that they did inherit it, that they are entitled to it. Now the Gemara asks, from whom can the orphans collect payment only by means of an oath? Because we've already seen that orphans do not need to swear an oath in order to collect the estate. And if other people want to come, creditors or a widow, and collect property from the estate that would otherwise go to the orphan, they must swear an oath. But here we have this other case where the orphan is going to swear an oath in order to dislodge property that had been sold to a third party. So the Gemara asks, from whom can the orphans collect payment only by means of an oath? If we say that they can collect payment only with an oath from one who borrowed money from their father, well, then it is difficult to understand how this can be so. All right, so that's one situation. Somebody borrowed money from their father, the orphan's father, right? And he never paid it back. So now the orphans come and say, the money that you owed our father, now you owe it to us. Are the orphans going to have to swear an oath about this? Let's keep reading. Now, can it be that their father, who lent the money, had the right to take payment from the borrower without an oath, by relying on the document, and they, the orphans, with regard to whom the sages were lenient, can claim the oath, the loan, only by means of an oath? Right? The father didn't have to make those people swear an oath. The father didn't have to swear an oath that this man borrowed. And he was not going to make that man swear an oath that he had repaid. I mean, that might come up. But the father is relying on the fact that he lent money and he was holding the promissory note of the borrower. So presumably what happened was the father died, and now the heirs found the promissory note. So they go to the borrower and say, here's the promissory note. You owed our father money. You didn't pay it. Pay us. Why should the orphans have to swear an oath for that? Their father didn't have to swear an oath for that. So rather, what the Mishnah is saying, and similarly the orphans of the lender who come to collect payment for the orphans of the borrower, wait a minute. I had to write something. Can it be that that they claim the loan only by means of an oath? Rather, this is what the Mishnah is saying. And similarly, the orphans of the lender who come to collect payment from the orphans of the borrower, they can collect only by means of an oath. How interesting. So, my father lent your father some money. Your father didn't pay back. My father died, God forbid. Now I have the estate which is holding the promissory note. Your father died, God forbid. And so I go to his orphans and say, look, your father owed my father money. My father died. Here's the promissory note. Your father never paid it off. So I'm coming to your father's estate. Pay the money that you owe us. In that situation, even though I'm an orphan, I would have to swear an oath vis-a-vis those orphans. Rav Zerika said that Rav Yehuda said, it was taught that those who take an oath can collect a debt from orphans only if the borrower's orphans said, our father said to us, I borrowed and repaid. However, if the orphans said, our father said to us, I did not borrow, then they may not collect from the orphans even with an oath. Right? So my father lent money to them, to him, right? And then both fathers died. So I say, I'm holding the promissory note. Your father never paid. Pay us the money. Pay me the money, right? So if the orphans of the borrower say, if they said, yes, we acknowledge that our father borrowed from you, but he repaid it, then I swear an oath that my father and our estate never got paid, and then we can extract the money. But if they say, we don't know anything about this loan, we never heard that our father borrowed money from you, so at that point, my group of orphans, my siblings, the heirs of the lender are just out of luck because we're not going to be able to extract money from his orphans. Now, Rava objects to this. On the contrary, there is a principle in the law of claims that anyone who says, I did not borrow, is considered like one who says, I did not repay. Therefore, when there is evidence that he did borrow, he must pay the entire amount without the lender having to take an oath. Okay, so if there is a promissory note, so whether they, according to Rava, whether they say our father borrowed but he repaid, or our father never borrowed, if the promissory note is here and it indicates that it was never paid back, then they do have to swear an oath or pay. So rather, the Gemara amends the above statement. So if it was stated like this. Rav Zerika said that Rav Yehuda said, they taught this law only if the orphans said, our father said to us, I borrowed and repaid. However, if they said, our father said to us, I did not borrow, those who collect debts from them can collect even without an oath. For anyone who says, I did not borrow, is considered like one who says, I did not repay. We might not even have to swear an oath if we've got documentation, right? There's documentation that the borrower borrowed and he never paid back. The lender's estate can sue the borrower's estate, and there's no oath swearing at all. New subject. The Mishna teaches that one who comes to collect her marriage contract when not in her husband's presence, right? So this is a situation where there was a married couple, and he went on a long trip overseas. Didn't come home for a long time. And when he finally sent a message back, what did he send? Not a nice guy. He sends a bill of divorce. Okay. He sends it by, a proper bill of divorce through a proper agent who delivers the bill of divorce properly to the wife. So that's it. It's been delivered to her. She's divorced. Now, at that point, she can collect her marriage contract. But because the husband is away, they're going to make her swear an oath. So she's already been pretty badly treated. This guy went away, and then while he was away, sent the bill of divorce. That's one way to tell the story. It might be that he divorced her as a kindness because his life is in danger, and he might disappear, and then she might become an aguna, a stranded woman, where there's no evidence of the husband's death and, his corpse. And so he sent the bill of divorce for her benefit, right? So you don't never be too quick to judge. There's always other sides to the story. But at any rate, she'd like to collect her divorce payment now, her ketuba payment. Because the husband is overseas, even though normally in the ordinary course of divorce, a wife just gets her marriage payment without having to swear an oath, he or she does have to swear an oath because the husband is not around to testify in court about any other, nuances and elements of this case. So the Mishnah teaches that one who comes to collect her marriage contract when not in her husband's presence can collect it only by means of an oath. Rav Acha Sar Habira said, an incident came before Rabbi Yitzchak in Antioch, and he said they taught this law only with regard to the wife's marriage contract, that she needs to swear an oath. But she may collect her marriage contract in her husband's absence They taught this law only with regard to the wife's marriage contract. She may collect her marriage contract in her husband's absence with this oath because the sages wanted men to find favor in the eyes of women. In other words, normally you might have thought that with the husband not around, she can't collect it at all. She can collect it because they wanted women, to not be afraid to marry men who might, just leave town and then she's stranded. But that they can collect their marriage payment even through a divorce that sort of came through a messenger. She'll have to swear an oath to do it, but that's not that onerous, and she can get the ketuba payment. However, a creditor does not have the right to collect his debt, even with an oath, if the borrower is absent in case he has already been paid. And right away, our antennas should go up. What? So you're saying that a creditor, who has an opportunity to seize the assets of a borrower who, welched on the loan, is not going to be able to do that if the borrower is not present in the city? Basically, you're creating a motivation for borrowers who don't want to pay back their loans to leave town. And then they can even leave their assets in town. But if the creditor can't collect in the absence of the borrower, then the creditors are out of luck. That would be a terrible policy because when you don't protect creditors, then credit dries up and poor people who need to borrow money will be unable to do so. And Rav Nachman said, even a creditor can collect payment with an oath in the borrower's absence. Why? So that each and every person will not take his friend's money by means of a loan and go and reside in a country overseas to prevent the lender from collecting the money from his property. And if that were to occur, you would be locking the door in the face of borrowers, as no one would be willing to lend them money. New subject. The Mishnah teaches, Rabbi Shimon says, whenever the wife claims her marriage contract, the heirs of the husband, right, so she's a widow, the heirs administer an oath to her. And so the Gemara asks, to which statement in the Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon referring? And Rabbi Yirmiyah said he is referring to this statement. And one who comes to collect her marriage contract when not in her husband's presence, right? The husband is away, let's say overseas, she can collect it only by means of an oath. So this implies that the law is no different if she comes to claim money from the orphans for sustenance, and it is no different if she demands payment of her marriage contract, right? So two different things. A widow might take her marriage payment, her whole ketuba payment, and then she's got what she is owed, and now she's done with the estate of her late husband. She's got some money to live off, and basically she's looking for a new husband. Alternatively, a widow can continue to live in her husband's house and request sustenance from her husband's heirs, right? They just have to give her basic food, clothing, shelter, and she can continue living in the home of her late husband because she's not ready to remarry. She's only going to get a small allowance, just enough to live on, but she can stay on that plan for a long time. As soon as she shows that she's ready to meet other men and to remarry, then they pay her the marriage payment and she moves out of her late husband's house, and now she's on her own again and looking for the new husband. So what Rabbi Shimon seems to be saying is that she swears this oath, whether it's for her marriage payment or for those sustenance payments while living in her late husband's house. And Rabbi Shimon comes to say that whenever she claims her marriage contract, the heirs can administer an oath to her that she has not taken anything of them. Right? So Rabbi Yirmiyah is saying, well, are we saying that she needs to swear an oath just to get the sustenance? Or are we saying that she swears the oath only at the time that she comes for the full ketuba payment? 88b. If she does not claim her marriage contract, the heirs do not administer an oath to her just for the sustenance payments, and they disagree with regard to the issue that is the subject of the dispute of Hanan and the sons of the high priests. Right? We saw this dispute elsewhere. Where? In a Mishna on page 104b of this tractate. We'll come to it. With regard to one who went to a country overseas and his wife claims money for sustenance. So Hanan says she takes an oath. She takes an oath at the conclusion, meaning when she comes to claim her marriage contract, that's when she takes an oath. But just to get sustenance, she doesn't have to take an oath. When she takes an oath, it's at the end, right? She no longer wants to receive sustenance. She just wants her full marriage, her ketuba payment. And at that point, she swears an oath that her husband did not leave her with any money and that she took from his estate only what she needed for her sustenance. And she does not take an oath at the beginning when she takes the allowance for her sustenance from his estate. Now, the sons of the high priest who disagreed with Hanan, they said she takes an oath that her husband did not leave her any money at the beginning when she comes to take money for sustenance, and at the conclusion when she comes to claim her marriage contract. And Rabbi Yirmiyah suggests Rabbi Shimon holds like Hanan, that she takes an oath only when she comes to collect the marriage contract. And the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Shimon hold like the sons of the high priest, who say she has to take an oath that she hasn't received other money at the time that she's asking for sustenance from, the estate in order to stay alive, and later when she decides, that she's widowed or divorced and she wants her full marriage payment. So Rav Sheshes objects to Rabbi Yirmiyah's statement that that Shimon is like Hanan and the rabbis are like the sons of the high priests in the ways that they hold on this question. So Rav Sheshes objects to Rabbi Yirmiyah's assessment of the two sides of this dispute. And Rav Sheshes says, if the dispute is with regard to a woman who comes to collect money for her sustenance while her husband is away, why would the Mishnah employ this phrase? The heirs administer an oath to her. It should have said that the court administers an oath to her. The husband's away. He's not dead. He doesn't have heirs. So it's the court who's administrating his property while he's away. To the court, she would swear an oath that she didn't leave her other money and she needs this, she seized property from his general property in order to be sustained. So rather, Rav Sheshes said that Rabbi Shimon's statement is actually referring to this earlier Mishnah that we had on page 86b. If a woman who was exempted from an oath by her husband went from her husband's grave immediately after her husband's death to her father's house without handling her late husband's property, or in a case where she returned to her father-in-law's house and did not become a steward. In other words, her husband died and she didn't have anything to do with this property, so he waived his right to demand oaths of her while he was alive, and after he died, she didn't have any interaction with this property. So why would his heirs demand that she swear an oath? She was exempt from ever having to swear an oath while the husband was alive. And after the husband died, she didn't touch his property. So why would we make her swear an oath? She doesn't have to swear an oath, said our Mishnah. And Rabbi Shimon came to say that whenever she claims her marriage contract, the heirs can administer an oath to her. But if she does not claim her marriage contract, the heirs do not administer an oath to her. So Rav Sheshes explains why he's bringing down this Mishnah. And they disagree with regard to the issue that is the subject of the dispute between Abba Shaul and the rabbis. As we learned in a Mishnah in Tractate Gittin, page 52a, a steward who was appointed by the father of orphans to take care of their property must take an oath when the orphans come of age and he returns the property. That's good, right? So somebody who is acting as a trustee for the property of young orphans, so he's going to have to, run the business of that property, take care of it to the best of his ability. And when the orphans, mature enough to take possession of the property themselves, this trustee swears an oath that while it was under his management, he didn't misappropriate any funds from it. Now, if the court appointed him steward, he need not take an oath. Right? Why did the court appoint him as steward? Because the court already investigated that he's an honest person. That's why he doesn't need to take an oath. The sages exempted him from an oath so that people would not refrain from serving as court-appointed stewards. Now, Abba Shaul says, no. The matters are reversed. If the court appointed him, then he takes the oath. If the father of the orphans appointed him, then he need not take an oath. It is an honor to be appointed steward by the court, and to receive this honor, he would not mind being obligated to take an oath. If he was appointed by the father, it is clear that the father trusted him and relied on him, and that's why we don't want to require him to take an oath. Now, Rav Sheshes completes his explanation. Rabbi Shimon holds, in accordance with the opinion of Abba Shaul, as the woman is comparable to a steward appointed by the father of the orphans. Therefore, she cannot be compelled to take an oath about the future unless she comes to claim her marriage contract. And the rabbis here hold in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis there that a steward appointed by the father is obligated to take an oath. Now, Abaye objects to Rav Shesh's assessment of this issue. This phrase, that the heirs can administer an oath to her whenever she claims her marriage contract, is appropriate only if Rabbi Shimon is more stringent than the rabbis, who exempt her from an oath in all cases. However, since according to Rav Sheshes, his opinion is the more lenient one, so he should have said if she claims, meaning that she is required to take an oath only when she claims her marriage contract and not otherwise. So rather, Abaye said that Rabbi Shimon's statement is referring to this clause of the Mishnah on 86b. If the husband wrote for her, I do not have the right to administer a vow or an oath upon you, he cannot administer an oath to her. If he wrote, neither I nor my heirs nor those who come on my authority have the right to administer a vow or an oath upon you or upon your heirs or upon those who come on your authority, then he cannot administer an oath to her or to her heirs, not he nor his own heirs, nor those who come on his authority. None of them may administer an oath to her or her heirs. Nor those who she appoints using her authority. And Rabbi Shimon came to say that whenever she claims her marriage contract, the heirs can administer an oath to her. Why? Even though this language of the marriage contract should be effective to exempt her from ever having to swear an oath during the husband's lifetime, if she comes to claim property that has passed to his heirs, even though he intended that his heirs would not be able to extract an oath from her before she seizes property, nonetheless, since she's coming to take property from orphans, they're going to make her swear an oath because that's by Torah law and it supersedes whatever they put in their ketuba. Now, Rav Papa objects to this. This works out well in explaining Rabbi Shimon's disagreement with the rabbis, where he said that she must take an oath whenever she demands payment for her marriage contract. However, what can be said about the second part of Rabbi Shimon's statement, where he speaks of one who does not demand payment for her marriage contract? According to Abaye's explanation, that clause does not add or teach anything. So rather, Rav Papa said that Rabbi Shimon is not referring to that Mishnah. His opinion is to the exclusion of Rabbi Eliezer and those who dispute him on page 86b, all of whom agree that the woman can be compelled to take an oath. I'm almost done. Get your questions or comments in. The woman can be compelled to take an oath that she did not appropriate anything from her husband's property. And the rabbis hold that she can be compelled to take an oath only if she was appointed steward, whereas Rabbi Eliezer holds that she can always be compelled to take an oath. Rabbi Shimon, who disagrees with both opinions, contends that the heirs can administer an oath to her only when she comes to collect her marriage contract, at which point they can administer an oath about other matters, including the work done with her spindle. However, if she does not claim her marriage contract, then they cannot administer an oath to her, even with regard to her work as a steward or a storekeeper. Very interesting. Right? So if she comes to collect her marriage contract from her husband's estate, meaning from his orphans, then they can make her swear an oath that she never received that marriage payment already before they pay it from the estate. And now that she has come to collect her marriage contract and they can make her swear an oath with respect to the marriage contract, they can also say to her, and by the way, you acted as the steward of our father's property while he was alive, and you were an employee in his store. Swear an oath that you never misappropriated funds in either of those situations. But if she doesn't come for her marriage payment, she doesn't appear and say, give me my marriage payment. Maybe she had enough during the marriage that she doesn't need to open this can of worms. Then they cannot say to her, swear an oath that you didn't misappropriate funds from our father's property while he was alive. They can't make that demand. That only kicks in if she comes to collect the marriage payment, and then they can make her swear further oaths. And that is according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 5. And tomorrow, when our daf is page 89, we will open with Mishnah number 6 here in chapter 9. Recall about the schedule. Today is Sunday. Tomorrow's Monday, class at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Tuesday is the morning before Yom Kippur begins, Tuesday night. So we're going to have class at noon, like the Friday before Shabbos schedule. So class at 6 p.m. Pacific normal time on Monday, class at noon Pacific, like a Friday on the afternoon before Yom Kippur. All right, let's see if we've got questions or comments on Kesubos 88. Bill, remind me, if the wife accepts a partial payment on the ketuba, can her husband issue her a receipt? I don't believe we've encountered that question. That's very interesting, right? So if he issues her a receipt, that wouldn't solve our problem. What we want is that she issues him a receipt, that she has received the partial payment. Because later, when she comes to collect the marriage payment, we're concerned that she'll say, I never received a partial payment. Give me the whole thing. There's evidence that you owe me the whole ketuba payment. The ketuba is evidence of that. So unless the husband has firm evidence that she received this partial payment earlier, he's the one, or his estate is the one that's going to have a problem. So that's why if he's giving a partial payment, he should have two witnesses to that effect. And really, he should get a receipt from her signed by two witnesses and her. Then he or his estate would be in the best position. Sharon, is holding a Torah and swearing in God's name kind of like what is done currently in a court of law, swearing on a Bible? I thought Jews were exempted from swearing in that manner for religious reasons and said an alternative proclamation. Right. Well, swearing an oath by Torah law is not something that we are doing in a court of law, right? In a secular court of law, that has nothing to do with Torah law, other than the fact that we have to follow the law of the land. But if there's an alternative statement that's possible, then I guess the Jew could do that. I'm not even familiar with this idea that a Jew would choose not to swear in a Bible. Although I could see, like, if it's just the court Bible, which would include more than what is contained in the Hebrew Bible, that a Jew would not want to swear on that. The idea of swearing on a Tanakh, right, on a Hebrew Bible, in a court of law, I don't know what the law is about that or whether we should do it or be comfortable with it. But when we're talking here about holding a Torah scroll and saying God's name, that would be only in a Beis Din, right? Before rabbinic judges, before a Jewish rabbinic court, in a matter of Torah law, and that wouldn't come up. That's just a totally different scenario than swearing on a Bible in a secular court of law, the way I see it. And Bill has, I think, taken on this question. In a modern court, there are a number of options. You can request your own holy book, or you can take the option for an affirmation rather than an oath. Affirmation rights are some of the oldest parts of the U.S. legal system, as distinct from British law, because of the significant number of Christian dissenters. We'd call them denominations today who frowned on or explicitly forbade oaths, particularly the Quakers. As a side benefit, this strengthened the idea of religious freedom for non-Christian religions. History is a fun ride sometimes. We can always count on you, Bill. Thank you. That was really informative. And finally, Tom, how does a court come to administer a man's property when he goes overseas? Is that customary procedure? I think that the reason that would happen is because, let's say that the husband, left a sum of money for the wife to be fine for a year. And he said, I'm coming back in 6 months, and here, just in case, here's money to take care of you for a year. He goes overseas, something happens. He doesn't come back after a year. He doesn't come back after 2 years. Now the woman is in big trouble. But the husband left assets in the city of his where he lives. She just doesn't have access to it. Let's say he has a business partner, right? So he's a partner in a business. That's an ongoing concern. She goes to the business partner and says, hey, listen, my husband has been gone for 2 years. I need money. The partner says, I don't know anything about it. Sorry. And then she can go to court and the court could seize assets of the husband, including assets that he has in this partnership with some third party, and make sure that she gets what she needs. So I think that's a situation where a rabbinic court could come to administer her husband's property while he's alive and still married, but overseas. That would be a scenario I would think of. Okay, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow for page 89 here in Tractate Kesubos. Have a good